I have some very disturbing news that I want to share with you, which you may already know about or may not know about. A couple of days ago, New York Cardinal designate Timothy Dolan was notified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services that the proposed mandate requiring all insurance plans to pay for contraception, sterilization, and some abortion drugs is official, and Catholics cannot escape. Cardinal designate Dolan responded by saying, in effect, we have 1 year to figure out how to violate our consciences. He said, this decision is a direct attack on you, our church, and the religious liberty of all American people. Beginning August 1st of this year, which is less than 8 months from today, the insurance premiums we pay, including the insurance premium paid by Catholics for employees of churches and schools, will be used to cover drugs and procedures that are in direct conflict with the teachings of our church. In effect, our government will now force us to pay for insurance coverage for birth control, sterilization, and some abortion drugs. Pope Benedict XVI addressed the bishops from the United States who were completing their Ad Limina visit in Rome. The Holy Father specifically cited the grave threats to the freedom of the Church in America and urged the Catholic community to respond, especially with an engaged, articulate, and well-formed Catholic laity. Now, having said all that, I realize these are sensitive issues. And I know there's a separation of church and state, and I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about matters of faith, principles of morality. I'm talking about some of the foundations that this very nation is founded upon, the freedom and the right to express ourselves in faith. And the encroachment on our religious liberties. I have to be honest, and I have to say to you that I never in my wildest dreams ever thought that we would be in a place, living in this great nation that we live in, where we would even have to consider violating our conscience. That isn't freedom. I want you to listen to what Pope John Paul II said when he wrote this encyclical, The Gospel of Life, Evangelium Vitae, in 1995. He said, everything at this point is negotiable. Everything is open to bargaining. Even the first of the fundamental rights, the right to life. This is what is happening also at the level of politics and government. The original and inalienable right to life is questioned or denied on the basis of a parliamentary vote or the will of one part of the people, even if it is the majority. This is the sinister result of a relativism which reigns unopposed. The right ceases to be such because it is no longer firmly founded on the inviolable dignity of the person, but is made subject to the will of the stronger part. In this way, democracy, contradicting its own principles, effectively moves toward a form of totalitarianism. The state is no longer the common home, where all can live together on the basis of principles of fundamental equality, but is transformed into a tyrant state, which arrogates to itself the right to dispose of the life of the weakest and most defenseless members, from the unborn child to the elderly, in the name of a public interest, which is really nothing but the interest of one party. To claim the right to abortion, infanticide, and euthanasia, and to recognize that right in law, means to attribute to human freedom perverse and evil significance, that of an absolute power over others and against others. This is the death of true freedom. I think there are many reasons that you can point to how we ended up where we ended up. But I think that one of the reasons is that you can point to this spirit of busyness. That everybody's so busy today that we find it difficult to find time to really do a good job of informing ourselves. And so we go to the nearest and the easiest form of information, which oftentimes is the television set, or the internet, or the newspaper, which is not always the most accurate source of information. I gotta be honest, and I gotta tell you that in many respects, I kind of feel like Jonah up here this morning, who went through the city of Nineveh and telling the people, listen, if you don't correct this behavior, there are going to be some dire consequences to this. And St. Paul, who said to the people, time is running out. Because the choices and the decisions we make today are going to have almost an immediate effect. No longer can we consider that the choices we make affect 20 years down the road. They're almost immediate in nature. And so I find myself struggling with the realization that I'm going to be forced to make a choice of whether obeying that law or to violate my own conscience. I can't imagine being put in that position, in that situation. And yet this is where we're at. I'm mindful, while I was reading this morning, proclaiming the gospel, that when Jesus called his disciples, they left their nets. Meaning, they left the very essence of the livelihood that they were using to support themselves and their families. Jesus Christ and following him was more important than that. We're also focused on the economy, that we forget the more important parts, the dignity of the human person. Following Jesus was a radical choice for the disciples. They left everything, including families. Now, no one here is being called to leave their job or to leave their family, but certainly we are being called to the same kind of radical transformation that they were. The first words out of Jesus' mouth are to say that the time of the fulfillment of everything that had been told was right then and there, right now. And then said, repent. Stop. And turn around and any other way. The responsibility of the psalm is saying, teach me your ways, O Lord. Well, to be taught the Lord's ways means that we have to begin to properly inform ourselves and to use the means necessary to do it. It means asking ourselves some very hard questions. Why does my church teach what it does? And where does that come from? All too often, those things are seen to be opinions that are dismissed. And so truth is abrogated, is seen as arbitrary, subjective. Well, that can be wrong for you, but it's okay for me. You know, most things in this life are negotiable, but there are some absolutes. Where there are some things that are absolutely right for everybody, and some things that are absolutely wrong for everybody when it comes to the dignity of the human person. So therefore, I'm asking you to pray for this great nation. That you pray for our leaders, that they govern according to gospel values, taking into consideration that the people they represent have dignity, every single person, and that we have to begin to protect the dignity of the weakest among us. And if we can't protect them, then none of us are safe. We have some hard choices to make. Some really hard choices to make. Choices that we make not only affect us, but they affect our children. And we are teaching them. Not by what we tell them. We are teaching them because they watch what we do. So we teach by our actions. Please pray that we return to the ways of the Lord. Please pray that we are all enlightened and that we recognize the blessings and the greatness of this nation that God has so blessed us with. That we might be restored, and that we might glorify God